All right, but first request was for number 1, which equation matches the graph. So look at all my answer options. What form are they all in? What form is that? Slope-intercept form. What 2 things do I need to identify to be able to write something in that form? Your slope and your b, what does the b represent? Your y-intercept. So, and let me just look on your actual test. I can tell you the one on your test is you being able to graph. So it's kind of like flipped. This one, it wants you to pick the equation for the graph. On your test, you'll be given an equation and told to graph it. But either way, you still need to know slope-intercept form. So M is your slope, B is your y-intercept. So the one that's probably easier to see on the graph is the y-intercept, because where does the y-intercept touch? The y-axis, and this one is labeled. Normally they're not labeled. What's a way to remember which axis is the y-axis? Y to the sky, right? So it's always the vertical one that goes to the sky. Where does it touch on the y-axis? At 3, right? Between 2 and 4 is 3. So that means the B is 3. How can I find M? Rise over run, good. I told you that you need to look for points that go through what? You guys remember? What points would be like best to use? Whole numbers. So if I have a crosshair, like pretend this is my grid, do I want my target to be like over here? You want it to go right through the grid, right? Does our y-intercept work? What's another dot that can work? Read it to me. -1, 1. So right here, that does work. You see how it goes right through the middle of the grid? All right. Now, once you make your 2 dots, create a triangle. Doesn't matter what way you create it, because you're counting your rise and your run. And it's always from your left dot to your right dot. So what is my rise to go from here to here? 2, so it's going to be positive. What's my run? To go from this dot to that dot. So I have 2 over 1, which makes M equal to 2. Put it together. My answer is y equals 2x plus 3. All right, because they're both positive. If it was negative, it would change it. All right, if it was negative, your slope would be going down from left to right. Your y-intercept would have been on the lower part. Questions? I think this one was like the most correct percentage. Like a lot of people got this one right. Any questions though? All right, which other ones do you want to see from your test? Any? You guys get number 2? Yes? Number 20. All right, so that's a good one. Yes. Yes. All right, so number 20. This one's a good one. It's what is the y-intercept of the line? And by the way, that line, what form is it in? Not in standard form. What did you say, Elijah?
Oh, nothing.
Okay, what form is this? It's not standard form. What other forms did we learn? Point slope form. That's what this one is in. But it doesn't really matter what form it is, so don't be discouraged just because it looks different from when we did it in class. It's asking about what the y-intercept is. What's the definition for y-intercept? It is when well, it's where it crosses the y-axis, but I don't have a graph of this. It'd be a little harder for me to graph this line. So what can I do? What's the other definition of y-intercept I told you guys about? So then you all should be writing this down for number 20. Okay, y-intercept is when, not when y equals 0, good try though. It's when x equals 0. All right, so write that down. Y-intercept is when x equals 0. So all I need to do for this problem is plug in 0 for the x. So I'm going to write everything down, but instead of writing x, I'm going to put in 0. Does that make sense? And then I'm just solving for y, and that'll tell me my y-intercept. So start simplifying. What's 0 plus 3.5? Come on, I know that question can't be that hard. What's 0 plus 3.5? Good. And then what's negative 4 times 3.5? You can use a calculator. Negative 14 equal to y plus 4. Now get the y by itself. How do you do that? So subtracting 4 on each side, and y equals negative 18. So that is my y-intercept, is negative 18. It says here don't type y equals, so if you put y equals negative 18 in the box, you got it wrong. But on your test, it's on paper. I can figure it out if you put y equals negative 18. But that's all you have to do. What's your y-intercept? It's when x equals 0. Plug it in and solve. Any other ones that you guys had questions on from your test? All right, but 11 is also asking about x and y intercepts. So same thing, here's how you solve. What does x-intercept mean? When y equals 0. What does y-intercept mean? When x equals 0. So that's all you have to do to solve. So if I want to solve for my x-intercept, I write down my equation, but instead of writing y, I plug in a 0. Right, you see I just copied the equation over and plugged in a 0 for y. That'll help me solve for my x-intercept. So like, what's negative 3 times 0? 0. X plus 0 is, so then once I have the x by itself, that's my x-intercept. So my x-intercept is 6. Then for my y-intercept, do the same thing, but now I'm going to plug in a 0 for the x. All right, so it's going to be 0 minus 3y equal to 6. What's 0 minus 3y? Positive or negative? Negative 3y equal to 6. And then get the y by itself. I divide by on each side, and y equals negative 2. All right, so that's why that's my y-intercept. So you are required to show this type of work on your test. That is worth points on your test tomorrow. But it is a good strategy to be like comfortable with Desmos. because you can use it to check your answers. So I'll show you on Desmos. When I type in that equation we were just working with, x minus 3y equals 6, I think is what it was. Yep. When I type in that equation, it gives me a nice line. And the other definition that we learned for x and y intercept is that your y-intercept is where it crosses your y-axis. And your x-intercept is where it crosses your x-axis. Isn't that what we solved algebraically? Yes. So don't rely on it because you still are required to show work. And I have seen kids do it this way and flip-flop the x and y intercept. But like that way you can verify your answer. Questions? All right, any others from the test? Going once. Going twice. Now you guys know how to find the slope between 2 points. You guys know how to model real world situations. I can tell you number 3 is not going to be multiple choice on your test. You need to know how to model it. And no, 30x equal to 450 would not be the right answer. Nope, no more questions? Okay, number 3. So then each day Lourdes reads 30 pages of a 450-page book. Write a linear equation to represent the number of pages she has to read after X days. All right. So again, tomorrow it's not going to be multiple choice for this one, but you can figure out which one is going to be your slope and which one's going to be your y-intercept. So your slope is always like something per day or per week or per person. So is that going to be the 30 or the 450? The 30, right? Because she needs to read 30 pages about X days. So I know, and I'm going to change this a little bit along the way. I know that my M is going to be something close to 30x. And then the y-intercept is like basically how many I'm starting with. So in this case, it's 450 pages that I'm starting with. Now here, it basically has that. It's just the signs. So you have to look at what it's asking. It needs to represent the number of pages she has left to read after X days. So Y should be number of pages left. So like if we're just talking about like one day, would that make sense for like A? If I plug in 1, does that mean she has 480 pages to read? No, right? Because that would be more than the pages in the book. So that doesn't make sense. That's why it's not A. If it's 30x minus 450, so 30 minus 450, so that's negative 420. Does that make sense? And you have negative 420 pages to read. So that's why it's not B. C, so negative 30x minus 450. So if we plug in after one day, negative 30 minus 450 is again another negative number. That wouldn't make any sense to have a negative pages left to read. But if I do this one, where after one day, I have negative 30 plus 450. Does that make sense that after one day of reading, you have 420 pages left to read? So that's why it should be represented like these. So you need to memorize how B looks like. Because again, it's not multiple choice tomorrow. Whatever it's talking about, your slope should be negative. And your y-intercept should be positive. Do I have questions about this? Yes. All right. Any other ones from your test? All right, so then you should know what the y-intercept represents. Pages already read, pages in the book, pages ready to stay, days it takes to finish the book, which one makes more sense? Pages in the book. I'm just kind of flipping through, stop me or raise your hand if you think of one that you want to go over.